Weather Authority, and I'm joined with Tracy Butler from ABC7, and we're actually at the ABC7 studios, thanks to Tracy.
Yeah, I wanted you to come and see what it's like, at the station, and just give you an idea, a flavor of what it is we use so that we can communicate information best to people. So we'll be doing a little tour, too, just the two of us here at the station.
So we're going to jump right into the questions. So what caused you to have a passion towards meteorology?
You know what? I mean, from the time, I think this is a story so often told by many. When I was little, honestly, one of my favorite things to do, and I still encourage children to do it today, is I was always fascinated just by clouds. Not necessarily storms or anything, and I know that's a big deal for many, but for me it was just clouds and the stories they would tell in the sky and the shapes that they would make. And in fact, there's a wonderful book called Little Cloud. I don't know if you ever read it when you were younger, but it's about a cloud that makes all different types of shapes in the sky. And of course, as we know, clouds tell stories in themselves of what type of weather is coming. And so I think that was what spurred my first interest, but I honestly never believed I would end up making a career out of it. So it was a surprising path for me, we'll put it that way.
Do you remember how old it was when you started liking it?
Probably like 7 or 8 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking, first several years into elementary school.
Okay. So you talked about clouds being your favorite. Do you have a specific favorite cloud, or?
I love cirrus clouds.
Okay.
I love the feathery shape. I just, we often talk about the cotton ball image of the cumulus clouds, but I just think cirrus are like a painting in the sky.
Yeah, and do you have a specific type of weather that you just love to watch or enjoy being in?
Well, my ideal temperature, Caleb, is 87 degrees. Which, in Chicago, it's I love when we can get to that. But, personally, I love the sun, I love the warmth, but I think one of my favorite types of weather really to study, despite the fact that I love the warmth and all of that, winter storms. Which is, Chicago's a good place to be if you're going to be talking about winter storms, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So what was your first job as a meteorologist?
My first job was in Wheeling, West Virginia. And ironically, Channel 7 in Wheeling, West Virginia, WTRF, and I was doing weekend weather there.
Oh, okay.
So that was my first job. And I'm originally from Pittsburgh, so Wheeling was only about an hour from where I was.
Okay. Can you give us a little view of your career background as a meteorologist?
You know what? Yeah, absolutely. I do think it's important to note kind of how I started in this, because I didn't start where many of the professionals that you talk to have started. And I can't believe I'm in incredible company by being a part of DuPage Weather Authority, because some of the people that you've interviewed, there's so much respect for those of us, or for those, I shouldn't include myself in that, I'd like to be, but for people like James Spann and Tom Skilling and Jim Cantori and, many, many others. There are so many people, Jerry Taft right here at our station, and many of the meteorologists who are here at the station too, who have been in this profession for years and built up incredible careers. And there's so much respect for them in the meteorology community. For me, when I got out of college, my background was actually in advertising and promotion. One of my jobs was to go with the talent, as they call on-air people, out to various venues and such. I loved going with the meteorologists to school visits and libraries, and they would do experiments, and I really started honing more of a meteorological interest then, but I didn't really think it was going to go beyond that. I started just hanging out with the one meteorologist, thank you Brian Sussman, who was there, and he just took me kind of under his wing, and I started learning more about graphing and charts and systems and all kinds of things as related to Pittsburgh weather. And there was an opening for a weekend weather person at the time in Wheeling, West Virginia, and he said, "You have to apply for this." I was like, but I officially then did not go to school for meteorology, and he said, "Then what are you doing here? You're coming in here, you're kind of learning some basics of forecasting and such." And I was, and I enjoyed that experience so much, I ended up applying and I got the job.
That's so cool.
So that was kind of my foray into the world of meteorology. And I went back and got my certification. Thank you, Mississippi State University. Did the proctored exams here at the National Weather Service office in Romeoville when they were doing it that way. And so I spent 5 years getting my meteorological certification.
Okay.
So that's the route that I did take.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So how long have you been a meteorologist then?
Well, I got my certification from Mississippi State in 2001.
Okay.
So, but it's just, it's one of those things I often liken meteorology to a puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we're always kind of trying to grab those pieces of the atmosphere and fit them together. And, you know, we hope we have all the pieces. And I love to build puzzles, by the way. But that's what I find so fascinating about this career, is it is like a puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And it always changes. And for those who may have short attention spans, you know, it's especially in Chicago, there's always something to be studying and looking at, and you never want to miss a piece of that puzzle.
So, like, what specifically do you like more, like broadcast meteorology versus like in the field or doing like National Weather Service stuff?
Oh my gosh! Well, you know what? Hats off to all the National Weather Service folks, because they help us tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they do. They have a lot of the backbone, and especially when it comes into severe weather and the warnings that they have to issue.
Mm-hmm.
We have some incredible people at the National Weather Service who, you know, really, between the AFDs that they write, the area forecast discussions, and all the research they do, that are very instrumental in what we do so that we can communicate their message
Mm-hmm.
to as many people as possible. But my background initially was in broadcasting and journalism. And I knew really since 7th grade that somehow I wanted to be in broadcasting. And so the fact that I had the broadcasting idea first, I was very enamored with this field from a fairly young age, and I just knew at that age that I was going to be in broadcasting somehow, some way. The fact that I was later able to weave meteorology into it, because it became a later interest for me, was really a bonus.
That's so cool. So what do you do at ABC 7 now?
Okay, so my work here, I'm the morning and midday meteorologist, and I get here at about 2:30 in the morning. And it's very glamorous. So my hours are typically 2:30 to noon. So I've been the morning meteorologist since 1995, although I started at the station in 1994. And if I can just maybe be a little bit braggy, I've been told that I'm the longest running female meteorologist in Chicago.
Oh, cool.
So I never thought I'd be in one place for so long, and I'm so lucky that I've been able to be just that. But I also do our newly returned 11 a.m. show, which is a wonderful thing too. I'm so glad we have our 11 o'clock news back, because we're able to have more time to communicate to people midday about the weather, and if they need to be, you know, wary about something, you know, the kids coming home from school or whatever it is that they need to be advised about. So so that's pretty much my job here, but I love getting involved in other things as well.
So what's your favorite part about working here?
It's an incredible station with an incredible legacy that goes back so many years. You know, again, I'm working in the same station that people like John Drury and Joel Daly and Jerry Taft and Linda Yu, you know, so many people. I know I'm forgetting some names that deserve to be mentioned in that crowd, certainly. You know, I'm working in that same station. John Coleman, a name familiar to many in the meteorology field, who was at this very station. So this is one of those stations that you say WLS, and a lot of people, they know about WLS. I'm very fortunate because of that. But I love what I do. I love being responsible for talking to people every single day about something that matters to every single person, no matter how old you are. how tall you are or, what school you go to. It affects every single person, and I take that very, very seriously.
That's great. So what made you start the Weather Sketcher program? If many of you don't know what that is, she has a program where kids send her pictures of the weather, and she puts them up on TV. So.
Yes, the Weather Sketchers program, I actually started at a television station in Ohio when I was there, WFMJ. And it was a time where a big story was many schools were cutting their art programs and their music programs and things like that. And I recognize that not all children maybe excel in math or science. We would love if everyone did, but some children excel in art and ways of expression. And I think that is something that is so very important too.
Yes.
And for those children to be able to express themselves through art is an incredible way of communication. And so being that I was doing weather in Youngstown, Ohio at the time, I wanted to nurture the creativity of children through art, and I came up with the Weather Sketchers Club.
Okay.
And so I did it in Ohio. I took it to the station I was at prior to here in Richmond, Virginia, and then I brought it here. And honestly, a big kick for me is getting to look at this artwork every single week. And I do all the judging myself, and I select 10 works of art every week, and we broadcast them on the morning show.
That's really cool.
It is, yes. And it's truly one of the most fun parts about my job.
That's great. Do you have a favorite weather sketch you've ever gotten, or
Oh my
really
gosh.
cool one?
Oh, there's so many. You figured I've shown thousands of drawings over the years, but I think one of the really interesting things is when a child can draw a windy scene, because you can draw sun, you can draw snow, but to capture the idea of a scene that's a windy scene in art, I think is really phenomenal. And I've had some tremendous works of art that, children have done. And, this isn't limited to, children who are school age. I take everybody from newborns to age 13. So, if you have a budding artist, would love to see that artwork.
That's great. So what is the most memorable weather event you've ever experienced?
I think it was actually when I was on a vacation, and it was, I think you're too young to remember this, Hurricane Danny.
Name sounds familiar, but
Danny was back in 1997.
Okay.
So, a little before your time.
Yeah.
I was on a trip to the Northeast, and Danny formed in the Gulf Coast states, was a hurricane. Of course, when it encountered the friction of the land, lost a lot of its oomph and just became a depression, headed for the Carolinas and the Southeast, and then it moved back out to the Atlantic and redeveloped as a tropical storm.
Wow.
It was a rare event, as I'm sure you would recognize that. And I was in Martha's Vineyard in the Northeast, and Danny was there. And so, by the way, Martha's Vineyard still looked beautiful in a tropical storm. So that's where I was. They weren't running any ferries back to evacuate. So I stuck it out during what was Tropical Storm Danny at that time. It was the power of just a tropical storm. And for those of us who haven't necessarily been in a hurricane, and of course we've certainly watched the development of a Matthew or an Andrew or a Hugo, to see the effects of just a tropical storm was very intense. The rain, the waves, all of that. Fortunately, we had safe shelter to be in. But, there we were. Nothing we could really do at that time because they weren't running the ferries to get back. I think that was probably one of my most memorable weather events.
Okay.
Really, as far as being in it, and but I've had, many other opportunities to just witness, especially as I mentioned to you, I love the study of winter.
Mm-hmm.
And, the blizzard of 99, when we had the blizzard back in one you might be a little familiar with, 2011. The Groundhog Day storms. And I remember how that storm, just all of the models were coming together.
Yeah.
It's not often we see that, do we? No. They're all, sometimes in disagreement. So for them all to come together and be able to forecast a winter storm like that almost a week out was really, really tremendous.
Yeah, it was.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have like a scary storm chasing experience, or a storm that you have that's really scary?
Oh my gosh. Goodness. Oh. You know what? No, I don't. No,
Okay.
I don't. And I'm not going to, I can't really liken any experience that I've ever had to some of the people that you have talked with. A Victor Gensini, perhaps, at College of DuPage, or Paul Servatka, two men I have great respect for and have gotten to know over the years. They run an incredible program there and that is very well respected.
Okay. So what is one tip you would give to someone wanting to go into the field of meteorology?
You know what? Learn the quirks of an area. And by that, what I mean is, when I moved into different areas, you really have to learn about the geography of the area. When I was in Richmond, Virginia, you had the Atlantic on one side, and then you had the mountains there just to your west. And so we would see things get stuck, like right between and over Richmond. Would get a lot of cold air damming where, you had these systems that would just get stuck and impact that region. When I worked in Youngstown, Ohio, now granted that wasn't too far away from Pittsburgh, but there were certain areas of Youngstown, Ohio that would get slammed with lake effect snow. Whereas you just got south of Youngstown and it seemed like there was a wall and the lake effect snow wouldn't permeate that much farther south. Here in Chicago, the quirk is Lake Michigan. What is the wind direction has such a huge impact on this area, whether it's here, and of course we have many viewers over in Northwest Indiana to be concerned about too, and especially when we get into lake effect season, that is definitely a wild card in so many forecasts. So I think really learning the quirks of where you are going to be working is a very, very important thing. And one of the things too with weather is being able to communicate to people of all ages. When they're watching you, the kids who are getting ready to go to the school bus, who are 5, 6, and 7 years old, it's as important to reach them as people in their 40s and people in their 80s and beyond, because this is something that affects every single person.
Got it. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Tracy. Guys, thanks for joining us. We'll be posting on this probably very soon, so we'll get that up. But thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to be interviewing you. And guys, we'll see you in the next one, and we'll keep reaching for the clouds, guys.
Yeah, you'll be seeing this guy, really, in the meteorology field. You'll be remembering and hearing this name sometime very soon. Take care, everybody.